Hey, welcome back. It's going to be Unit 4, Day 11 for today. So make sure you have a history notebook out and taking notes as you move through the video. And make sure you complete the vocabulary for this video. So let's go ahead and get started. So our key terms for today are going to be Truman Doctrine, Marshall Plan, the NATO and Warsaw Pact, Berlin Airlift, Berlin Wall, Welfare State, European Union, and New Feminism. Concepts, we're going to talk about the causes and progression of the Cold War and life in Western Europe during the Cold War. So let's talk about the origins of the Cold War. So they take place 2 years. It really starts 2 years after the end of World War II. It's kind of the Yalta Conference, right, where the Allies are meeting to kind of decide what happens in Europe in the post-World War II era, the post-Nazi, the post-Germany era. Both sides are pretty angry over World War II. Both sides are hurting really, really bad. A lot of sides have millions of casualties, hundreds of thousands of casualties. It's just rough. But at the core of the Cold War, it's an ideological war, right? You have capitalism and kind of Republican democracy on one side, and you have communism and authoritarian state on the other side. And that's really what's going to be the driving factor between these two. And these kind of post-war territorial divisions are going to kind of really reflect this growing schism between the U.S. and the USSR. Now, Europe's going to be pretty much cut in half, with Germany, half of Germany, east, going to be Soviet-controlled, and west going to be Allied control. But at the same time, they're going to divide Berlin itself, which is in the Soviet-controlled area, in half. The concept that is kind of coined is known as the Iron Curtain, where you have, in Europe, you have the West and you have the East. The East being Soviet and communism, and the West being capitalist democracy, right? And so this is where this kind of divide happens. Also, 1947, the Truman Doctrine, like President Truman comes up with a doctrine that the United States will support any free peoples resisting subjugation. They're going to adopt an interventionist policy called containment, which is to contain the spread of communism. They're going to stop the spread of communist revolution, stop the spread of communist kind of aggression. And the first starts off in Greece and Turkey. By 1948, the United States has an economic recovery plan for Europe, which is the Marshall Plan, which is going to rebuild not only the buildings and the people, but the economy and the technology, and modernize it and really bring it into the 20th century. Now, NATO is going to be the Western Allies' militarization of the Cold War, and then the Warsaw Pact will be the Soviet kind of communist side of the Cold War. And so what the Cold War really boils down to is you have the communists and you have the capitalists. And it's this ideology, they don't mix. You put them in a room together, they're going to fight. So that's where the kind of basis of the Cold War kind of moves on, right? Here's a map. Anything in blue is either, dark blue is NATO, light blue is allied with the United States, and then you have dark red, which is the Warsaw Pact, which you can see is Russia and Western Europe. You have NATO, which is the United States, or in Western Europe. Warsaw Pact is Russia and Eastern Europe. Then you also have like Soviet countries allied, socialist countries allied with the USSR. And then the little dots, like the red dots are communists, like revolutionary guerrillas, and the blue dots are anti-communist guerrillas funded by the other side. Right? So this is really where, this is by 1949, this is where the world sits in versus communism and capitalism. Now, the Cold War in Europe is rough, to say the least, right? This is Germany divided, east and west. in 1949, the United States was supporting Western Berlin, right? Trying to keep it afloat, rebuild it, to kind of as a shining beacon of progress and modernization against communism. Well, 1948, the Russians are like, no, you can't drive your cars through our area to get to Berlin. You can't do that. We're going to blockade that. So what they did is they just started flying planes over and landing in Berlin. At the height of the Berlin airlift, there was a plane landing with supplies every 5 to 10 minutes to make sure that Western Berlin really survived this kind of Cold War kind of aggression, right? By 1961, the Russians had built a wall that literally cut Berlin in half, because what they found was happening is that people in East Berlin were just like walking across to West Berlin to like be capitalist, and nobody was going the other way, so they had to like stop people from just leaving. So they built the Berlin Wall, and that really becomes the symbol of the Cold War, is this Berlin Wall. Now, during this place, we also have a nuclear arms race. Now, after World War II, we get, in 1945, America has the nuclear weapon. They have nuclear bombs, right? Pretty much the next year, or the same year, Russia has nuclear weapons. Right? Then America will develop the hydrogen bomb. 6 months later, the Russian will develop a hydrogen bomb. And so it's this building and building and building and building of these nuclear arsenals. But they can't use them, right? And what that comes to realize is that, hey, we can't use all these nuclear weapons, because if the United States and Russia get into a fight and they use nuclear weapons, they'll destroy the world. Right? That is known as MAD, or mutually assured destruction. So make sure that gets written in your notes. Mutually assured destruction, MAD. Right? So again, here's a great map showing West Berlin. So if you see in East Germany, we have a little blue speck in East Germany. That is West Berlin. And so what the Allies would do, they go from West Germany, they fly the little planes over to East Germany and land in West Germany and drop off stuff. Right? So again, it's the economic, and here's also the dividing lines. Right? Everything in red, that is Soviet controlled. Everything in blue and green striped is either Allies or Western Allies, NATO, or not under Soviet control. So, what happens in Western Europe? Well, there's new state structures that get in place. There's more Western democracy, more liberal democracy. The United States is going to support this area by a permanent presence of the American army. There's going to be a lot of changes, right? We're going to see the development of the welfare state. European politics is going to shift to the left, with capitalism, with some socialism mixed in, meaning that, like, hey, we're going to help the poor, free universities, more kind of government involvement, while still maintaining that level of capitalism, very similar to today in the United States. And what this does is economic cooperation leads to what is known as European Economic Communities, or EECs, which are these like trade zones, trade affiliations, kind of that they just trade together. This will eventually lead to the European Union in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, which will include a parliament and a currency union, right? Also, we have a big economic expansion that's going to create this giant economic boom, which is supported by the Marshall Plan, which is going to bring a lot of bring back up Western Europe, and truly kind of as an attempt to show that Western Europe is far better than Eastern Europe. Right? Now, in the United Kingdom, They had a slow recovery from the war, even with all the support from the United States. They're also going through a period of rapid decolonization, such as India being freed in 1949, African colonies freed in the 50s and 60s, right? And again, they're kind of there's more liberal, right? But Margaret Thatcher in 1979 to 1992 is going to try to relax that welfare state. She is elected as a conservative, and she really is going to try to be more capitalist, kind of relax the welfare state. It doesn't work, but she at least does attempt. And Western Germany, under the French, US, UK pressure, is integrated into Europe to avoid future wars. The strong economic recovery by the Marshall Plan and building back up the area is called the German economic miracle. They build factories and they really become on the cutting edge of technology. They're building and building and building to kind of build it back up after the devastation of World War II. They build a social market economy which mixes capitalism and welfare socialism, which is what most of the West becomes, such as the UK, France, United States, other places. And by 1989, we have the European Union, which includes UK, Ireland, Spain, Portugal, and Greece, and eventually will encompass all of Germany and encompass more and more of Europe. In 2005, they had a common parliament, passport, trade policies, currency, and a central bank, right? What does that mean? That means we have probably a new Europe, and we still kind of have a new Europe today, minus one notable member, being the United Kingdom when they left, right? But we do have kind of a new kind of united Europe in the face of the Soviet Union. Now, what about the US, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada? All those former white dominions, all become liberal democracies with welfare states. So they're capitalist mixed with socialist welfare. They're all aligned to the United States. Canada will join the United States and Mexico in the North Atlantic Trade Association. Well, Canada does have some internal issues with French Catholic Quebec wanting to be kind of independent because they're more French speaking. We also have Inuit devolution, right? But for the most part, they really join the United States and do whatever the United States does. Australia becomes a strong U.S. ally in the Pacific. Internally, they get a little racy with their whites-only immigration policy. But the 20th century is really like a U.S. century. Right? From 1914 onward, they're going to dominate the world stage. They're going to create NAFTA, NATO, the Truman Doctrine, Marshall Plan, military alliances. They're really going to become that globalized stage. And it's really, the United States really solidifies power during this time. So now let's talk about some dramatic changes in culture and society in the West. After World War II, more women in Europe and other places around the world are able to vote, and they also begin to enter politics. Now, during this time, this is kind of growth. This is after World War II. Women are coming out of the factories and back into the home life. Many women delayed marriage and children in order to work, to become more independent. New technology such as birth control, advances in abortion and legalization of abortion through Roe v. Wade. Divorce is going to increase. There's more of a chance for women to get their children in divorces. And this all comes with a new wave of feminism. This is the second wave of feminism. The first wave of feminism was suffragettes and voting. This new wave of feminism is more rights, equality, both literal and legal equality. This is also supported by Second Sex by Simone Bolivier, The Feminine Mystique by Betty Friedan, right? It's all this kind of more equality, more equal in law and just in general. Now, Western culture is going to expand access to education, including universities, mandated education. During this time, the 20th century, we're going to get desegregation, equal schooling, free universal schooling. In Europe, we're going to get more access to free university education. We have more expression, arts, and cultures, a challenge to traditional approaches. We're going to have more sexual experimentation with the sexual revolution in the 60s and 70s, which increases more for premarital sex and sex for pleasure, which has its own set of issues we're not going to get into right now. And also, just overall, we have a secularization of most aspects of life, meaning that we go from a large majority of the population going to church to 50% by the end of the 20th century. So that's all I have for you guys today. If you have any questions, please ask. I will see you guys in class. You guys have a great day. Bye.